The following is a special video presentation of the Hennepin County Library.
Hello, welcome to a discussion with James Van Sweden, author of Gardening with Water. I'm Jenny Lopp, and we're here today to discuss his new book. The Federal Reserve Garden in Washington, D.C., where you work, a landscape architect, a noted landscape architect in Washington, D.C., really kind of put you on the map and put you in the public eye. And can you tell us what was so exceptional and interesting about that garden that people took such note of it?
Well, I think the great thing about that design was that it showed Washington that gardens could change dramatically with the seasons. It could be a very beautiful metaphor for the American meadow. We used a lot of ornamental grasses. No one had ever seen that, even in the United States, and we used them on a huge scale so that it really looked like a picture of the meadow, which was very impressive to people. The other thing about that garden, I think, was that it was beautiful in the winter. And gardens of this type change dramatically with the seasons, and that is one of the best contributions we made. I think a lot of people in Washington and now across the United States find that these gardens are more beautiful actually in the winter than any other season, and it's big news because we're used to evergreen, and I think most Americans thought that gardens in the winter were dead, but we proved that they're just dried bouquets.
Well, I think of you as really the preeminent American landscape architect today with Mr. Uma, your partner and associate.
Oh, thank you.
And it seems to me that really your signature plants are ornamental grasses, and that seems to be an unusual new approach.
Yes, well, Wolfgang really brought them from Germany, and he was influenced or inspired by the work of Carl Förster, who was developing a lot of cultivars of ornamental grasses, actually discovered a beautiful one called Calamagrostis. He was riding on a train and saw it growing along the train tracks, and pulled the chain on the train, stopped the train, and got out and picked it up, and we use it now in all of our gardens in the United States. But I was inspired by a Dutch landscape architect, Mien Ruys, who works in Amsterdam and is now very old but still has an office, and we kind of began using those in the 60s and have been ever since.
Oh, they're beautiful. And it seems to me that it really has kind of opened up a whole new vista for Americans thinking about meadow gardening.
Well, I think it loosened things up. I know in Washington everything was so uptight. I like to say that the traditional American garden looks like you just come from the hairdresser, everything is sort of primped up. And we've shown that if you let your hair down and let your gardens be relaxed, they're much more beautiful. They soften all those hard edges, cool things down. And as I say, they change with the seasons. They're also low maintenance because they're planted in these huge masses. And so you don't need so much lawn. You can get rid of your lawn, and you can have gardens that use very few chemicals, a minimum of water, and are very beautiful at the same time.
Well, and that leads us to your new book, Gardening with Water. Can you talk a little bit about why people in particular would be interested in gardening with water?
Yes, I think water adds that perfect, wonderful touch to any garden. It brings the sky in, it'll bring in nature, raccoons will arrive, birds love it, you can have fish. We have clients who become so attached to their fish they pet them and they name them all. And so it brings all those special qualities. The sky comes in, it reflects your trees and flowers, and it even cools the air if you have on hot summer nights. And people love to gravitate toward water in parties. They always sit very close and actually like to dangle their fingers in the water while they're there.
Well, what kind of considerations would one take into account when planning a water garden?
Well, I think you should look at your property, your garden. It may be very small, in which case you might just want a fountain. If you have a wall, you could hang just a shell on the wall and let the water drip over or cascade over into a basin below. You could just put a bird bath out or a dish of water. In my own garden, which I'll show you, in my garden, I have just the top of a lantern, a pottery lantern, the concave top, which holds 1/4 of an inch of water. It's only 10 inches in diameter, and even that that small surface reflects the sky, and you can see it reflecting. You can see it reflecting red shine lily flowering tulips in this picture.
That's beautiful.
It's very nice. My garden is only 17 feet wide and 55 feet deep, so it's very small. And I hadn't designed it originally with a built water element. And since it's so well known now, I don't want to add one, so I just use this very simple element for the water feature.
And the sculptures are beautiful as well.
Yes, those, I might show it again, those are spheres made by Grace Knowlton, who is a sculptor working in New York.
It must be difficult to plant such a long, deep, awkwardly shaped garden to make it look so lush and inviting to come into.
Well, it is. I think it's a special problem. I call one garden I designed, which is 85 feet deep and 18 feet wide, I call it a railroad car because it's that long, narrow shape. And what I did was create a layered effect by placing the planting exactly in the strategic places to sort of modulate the space. Here you see the plan, and the house is at the bottom. And then if you look, I have used this kind of very gentle serpentine walkway in the dried stream tradition of Japan and layered it with major plantings. You can see trees placed here at this point a third of the way back, a halfway back, and then toward the back, so you feel like you want to look around, and it creates mystery in this space. Halfway back from the house, I placed a special fountain, a kind of millstone, which has a water jet coming up through the middle and drips out over the side. And I'll show you a picture of that now.
It seems there's a lot of Japanese influence in all of your garden, particularly your water gardens.
Yes, I've been to Japan 3 times, and I enjoy it very much. And I've been very greatly inspired by Japan. Here you see, even this has a Japanese feeling flavor, I like to say. You can see I've used that millstone, carved it as a kind of pinwheel on the top, and the water is coming out the center and then dripping over the side and going down into the basin, which is disguised. It's under a layer of stones. And so it is recirculating water.
Did you have a diagram of that in this book?
Yes, I
can't
do.
remember. It was kind
Actually,
of
the book has a lot of details. I call it a cookbook for building water features in gardens. Here is the detail, actually, which you can see in this this picture, a drawing made in my office, and you can see the actually see the millstone and the shell. If you look at the bottom, you can see the shell of the lily pool, which holds the reservoir of water. Mm-hmm. And the pump is here, and then the line comes up, and that creates the bubble on the top and puts the water over the top.
And the water just keeps recirculating.
It keeps recirculating, yes. It would be very wasteful to have just water running.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
Well, you'd also drown yourself.
Right.
Well, is it difficult to maintain this particular type of planting, especially in these water gardens?
Well, I think if you have a lily pool with standing water, it takes about the same amount of maintenance as lawn. Mm-hmm. Actually, it's not that bad. If you get it in, here's a beautiful lily pool in Virginia. If you get it into balance, and that means you need about half the surface of the water covered with lily pads, and then you have plants in the water, oxygenating plants and fish, you'll find, once it's in balance, that it stays clear and it's rather easy to maintain. At the end of the winter, we usually drop the water about 1.5 feet, so we have maybe 6 inches left, and then we just shovel out all of the refuse, the leaves and so on, that has settled to the bottom over the year.
So in Minnesota, do you think that one might actually be able to keep their lily pads in the garden, or would they have to bring them into a basement area or a garage area for them to winter over?
I think that hardy water lilies here would, of course, be able to stay in the pool if it's deep enough, and it should be about 2 feet deep. Also, you can leave your fish in, and it'll freeze over. The fish will go into dormancy and stay close to the bottom, and they will not eat during the winter. But one thing you've got to be very careful of is not to break the ice, because if you break the ice, it instantly kills all of the fish. Oh. And almost every year I have clients call and say that their children have broken the ice on there, which is lots of fun. But all of their fish are belly up, which is not very nice.
And what kind of fish are they usually that would go into a lily?
Usually we put in just the old goldfish, and then after we're sure everything is fine, we introduce the koi carp from Japan, which are very beautiful and quite expensive. And then we have a favorite fish called an orf, And these fish are long and very light gold color. And they move a lot, so there's a lot of action when you have orphs in your pool. And that's nice, because the koi tend to kind of stay rather quiet, and it's not as much fun as fish that are really moving fast.
So
The one thing about fish is that they eat the larvae of mosquitoes. So you must have them in a pool like I just showed you, because then you won't have the problem of mosquitoes.
And with the recirculating water, that's enough aeration for the water that the fish can live? And
Oh yes, the fish can do very well. All you need is a bubbler. You don't want too much action on the water, because the problem then is lilies don't like a lot of movement, water movement. But just a waterfall or a jet will do it, and you can just keep it a kind of bubble, just to keep the water kind of moving.
what about a swimming pool? What should people take into consideration when they're building a swimming pool on a small urban lot versus a large wooded lot?
Well, I think on a small urban lot, a swimming pool should be rectangular and probably have square corners. While on a large country property, you could do a much more natural kind of pool, very natural, and plant right up to the coping. Even in small properties, we plant right up to the coping. And that gives it a kind of very natural look. It makes it look more like a pond than a swimming pool. And I like this a lot. I think it's important to soften all those edges.
Yeah.
I hate that bathtub look. The other thing about a swimming pool, I think it's important to keep it off on its own. Even in a small garden, you can give it its own space and create a world for it, so it has its own place in the garden, and the kids can be playing off in that world, and you don't have to see it from the house. You don't have to see it from the house when it's winter either, because pools are usually pretty unsightly in the winter. Here you can see an example of a swimming pool in the countryside in Virginia, which is planted right up to the coping on the far side.
It's beautiful.
If you look at this far side, you'll see that it's planted right up to the edge, and those plants hang out over the water. They reflect in the water, and they also soften the hard edge, making this look more like a pond than a swimming pool.
Oh, it's very inviting.
This particular pool is shaped like a chambered nautilus. I was very interested in that shape when I was designing this.
What does chamber nautilus mean?
Well, it's the shape of a shell, you know, a beautiful shell that one finds on the beach. Here you see that shape
It's beautiful.
in the photograph.
And are you the first person who really introduced, you and Mr. Uma, the whole idea of having a more naturalized setting for swimming pools?
Well, I think we're the first designers to introduce planting right up to the edge. And it was a problem at first. People thought plants would shed into the water. We use plants that don't. They were worried about mulch getting into the water. We use gravel. We always mulch with gravel when we're coming up to the edge of a swimming pool. And that way you don't have anything blowing in. It stays in place, and the grasses don't shed, so we usually use grasses. Sedum doesn't shred. And if it does a little bit, it doesn't matter. It's worth the price of a little more maintenance.
Well, it's interesting because there are some beautiful pictures in there of lily pools or pools of water that come directly up to the foundation of a house. And I was wondering, technically, how you would actually manage doing that, as you must have to have a very strong foundation on your house to do that.
Well, you have the foundation of the house, and then just against it in parallel, you have the shell of the pool. It's not really part of the pool itself is not part of the house foundation. They're separate, and there's actually a space between.
There is.
I did that in this garden. You can see the water comes right up to the sill of the living room windows here. And what I did was just build a separate basin for this pool, but used a wide sill. So the sill not only covers the foundation of the house, it also covers the top or the beam of the pool shell.
Oh.
So that gives this wonderful effect of water coming right up to the living room windows.
And is this a concrete bottom that has been painted or treated somehow?
Yes, this happens to be a gunite. It's brought in, it's pumped through hoses. It's a light concrete with a kind of insulation mix in it. And it's reinforced, but then it has a coating of Portland cement and a final parging coat of lamp black plaster. So that gives it that a dark quality, a dark color. Of course, the lily pool will turn black anyway.
It
but
will. Now, why is that?
It just turns black from the various elements that are coloring it in the water from the fish and also the leaves and so on. So it'll stain black. But most of our clients don't want to wait, so we start out with a black pool in the beginning.
And do you ever use plastic shells in any of these pools?
We use plastic liners on large, very large farm ponds, for instance. But I prefer not to use the manufactured plastic tubs because they limit you in shape, and I find them difficult to disguise on the edge. I'll just show you. This is a big farm pond in Maryland, and here the workers are actually laying down the vinyl bottom of that pool. Now that was laid in place, and then 10 inches of clay were put on top of it, so it has a natural kind of bottom, and you don't have this vinyl as the bottom of the pool, but you actually have earth as the bottom of the pool. It's tricky here also to attach the edge and to disguise it so you don't see the liner at all. We do that with plants and rocks.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
It looks just lovely. How would you actually, in Minnesota, we're the land of 10,000 lakes, how would you incorporate using natural bodies of water such as marshes or bogs or lakes or Lake Superior in any of your garden vistas?
Well, I think when we're looking at a lake or bay edge, we look for the plants that are natural to the area, what is native, what works, and what is the character of the edge. And then when we plant it, what we add just enhances that and keeps it very much in scale, very horizontal. I think the beauty of a large body of water is that horizontal line, and so we try to maintain that. And here in the Rosenberg Garden on Long Island, you see how we treated this edge. We used ornamental grasses here, this beautiful bright gold, and then it just blends in with the reeds growing along the edge of this bay. This is Mecox Bay, way out at the end of Long Island.
I notice from the pictures you often have the grass coming right down to the edge of the water. It's absolutely fascinating and beautiful looking to me.
This is lawn.
Is that hard to maintain? Yes, lawn grass, yes.
Lawn is always hard to maintain, but I think an edge of lawn along the water is very beautiful, and the creation of those plains, simple plains. For instance, in this garden, this is taken at sunup, very early in the morning. You see the deck in the foreground at the bottom of the picture, and then the swimming pool with its beautiful plain of water, and then the simple plain of lawn, and then it drops down to the bay itself. So that just the simplicity of this photograph is just illustrates how we deal with an edge like that. This is winter.
Beautiful. And what are these tall grasses, right?
That's a Miscanthus giganteus, which is a grass from China. It's an ornamental grass, and it's exotic, but it maintains that shape. It doesn't spread, and so it's very low maintenance.
Oh, it's beautiful. Well, you have some interesting theories about grass in America today and lawn in America today.
Oh, yes, right. I think that lawn is the highest maintenance material in gardens, the highest maintenance plant. So I think in the future, the next 1,000 years, we're going to see less and less lawn. And we're taking out lawn everywhere. We tailor the size of a lawn for our clients to exactly what they need. It might be an extension of a terrace. I know in your case it would be a place for the kids to play, and it might be just a small spot for someone to sunbathe, but we try to do everything in ornamental and simple meadow-like planting except for that exact piece of land that one needs.
And
lawn.
Do you have any feelings about drought-resistant plants or that in particular that you use in your designs?
We don't worry about that very much in Washington. But
Yeah.
I'm just starting a garden in Santa Fe, and there, of course, it's very important to use plants that are native to the area and also require very little water. But in general, I think these gardens, the so-called New American Garden, requires very little water once it's established. But we do usually put in an irrigation system for those droughts. We always have droughts. I'm sure you do here also in Minneapolis.
Yes, we do. Well, that makes a great deal of sense. What about shape and size as far as a pool or a swimming pool, the lily pool or a swimming pool, in relation to the house and in relation to the garden itself?
I think that shape is a personal, very personal thing. I usually say that it should be based on your experience, what you have seen, what has impressed you. But my general feeling is that in a small garden, curvilinear lines make a small garden look smaller. So in a small garden, I wouldn't use a curvilinear pool. But certainly in the distance, if you're designing a swimming pool in the distance, a beautiful free-form shape is perfectly appropriate. I think if it's close to the house, a lily pool or swimming pool should pull the architecture out into the garden and should be very architectural in itself. In other words, I think it should be a very strict form, like a rectangular square or a circle.
And the same, what about size in relation to that?
As far as size goes, for a lily pool, I found after traveling in Japan that the bigger the water feature, the better the garden. The Japanese will actually build a water feature that takes up as much as 2/3 of their garden. And it's amazing how dramatic that is. It's absolutely wonderful.
Well, and you also use a lot of very loose and interesting placement of rock in these gardens as well. Is that a Japanese theory or just a personal preference?
Yes, I think it's Japanese, and I think I was greatly influenced by my travels to Japan and the way they placed rocks. And so it has influenced me. I think we do it in a different way from the Japanese, but it is certainly inspired by the Japanese. I wanted to show you a swimming pool that's in a country property, and here it's very architectural on the house side, but it becomes this wonderful, simple, sinuous curve at the woods, and it almost looks like this pool is cantilevered into the woods.
It's beautiful. What about waterfalls? Are people very interested in incorporating waterfalls into their gardens?
Oh yes, and there's nothing like that whitewater sound. It can make you feel like you're, out in the woods, even in the city.
Well, it must be nice to mask city noise, I would think.
Oh yes, it does. And there are some very famous waterfalls, one in New York in particular that blocks out all the traffic sound on 53rd Street in Manhattan.
How expensive is it to put in any kind of water feature in your
Well,
garden?
it can be very reasonable. As I say, you can just buy a bird bath or have a dish of water, and it'll bring in those birds and bring in that wonderful reflection and cost very little. But it can go all the way up to several $1,000s if you're doing a real lily pool in concrete with all the planting, placement of rock. Of course, if you're going to get out there with your shovel yourself and dig it, you'll be fine. It won't cost you that much. And the only thing you should do is be sure to have the electricity done by a professional. Be sure you have all your codes and check all of the regulations to make sure that you're meeting all of the laws.
Well, and the plumbing, I would imagine as
Yes.
well.
Oh, yes.
Going out to it.
I think I'd have a plumber do that.
It does seem to me, however, that I have seen in some lumber yards and other types of places like that you can actually buy pre-made ponds of some kind that have plastic liners with the pump, etc., and that you
That's
then
true.
hook up. But I would think that would be much more difficult to incorporate into any kind of setting and make it look more natural.
Yes, you have to be very careful, as I say, of the edge, and you don't want that plastic to show. And if you do a terrace, be sure to bring it out and cantilever it a couple of inches over the water so you get the shadow line. But the big problem there is just disguising that edge and making sure it's not seen.
How about your new book? I understand that there's a very exciting new book coming out, Wild Kingdom, or what is it?
Yes, Wild Kingdoms in Town and Country. And it's about how we plant. And it'll treat various kinds of garden problems, planting slopes, planting meadows, planting water edges, and shade, planting for shade, garden rooms, all the different problems we face when we're attacking our clients' gardens. And we'll show how this is done, how we do it, how we put the plants together. So this is about water, that'll be about plants. And I have a contract for 3 books with Random House. And that'll be the second. And then third, I think, will be Town and Suburban Gardens. Most of us live in suburbs, and so we'll show how we treat sort of the average suburban garden, gardens that will take a swimming pool but will not take a tennis court, for instance.
Well, small gardens, I would imagine, would be the most difficult to plant because every inch seems to have major importance in the yard.
They are difficult, and you also have to fool the eye, and you have to pretend that it's much bigger, and use what the Japanese call borrowed scenery. You know, use your neighbor's trees and your neighbor's space, and that way you'll give the feeling that it's much bigger than you would think. And also plant out all those fences. So once it's in full bloom, you won't see any fences. You'll have the feeling that it goes on forever.
And is there, with an abundance of grasses, does that bring possibly any more bugs? In Minnesota, we have a lot of mosquitoes.
No, the ornamental grasses don't bring in bugs. We've never had a complaint about that, and they're so natural and cool that they're wonderful to look at in the summer. And then, as I say, in the winter they turn gold, and so you have that beautiful golden look through the winter months.
Well, I imagine that would be beautiful in front entrance gardens as well.
Oh yes, we've taken out a lawn in front yards in Washington, and we're doing it all over the place now. We're getting rid of the lawn in front and bringing back the garden in the front yard, and reclaiming the front yard for the people who live in the house, instead of having that kind of mindless lawn going up to a bunch of bushes against the foundation. We pull out all that foundation planting and just plant the entire front like a tapestry of meadow and prairie plants.
Oh, must be beautiful.
Works pretty well.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I think we've covered a lot of
Thank you
the
for having
water
me.
aspects, and look forward to the next time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
A presentation of the Hennepin County Library.